I'm about to make French baguette. And here are all the items that I need. Bread flour, honey, salt, yeast, and I suggest that you invest in a food scale, and there are different types of measuring cups. You have the liquid measuring cup and then the dry measuring cup. This recipe calls for 3 cups of bread flour, and I always use unbleached flour. 2 tablespoons of sugar, but I am doing honey instead, and salt to taste. It says a packet of yeast, which is approximately about 1 tablespoon. It's important to test your yeast prior to mixing all the ingredients, because you want to know if you're using a good packet of yeast or not. You don't want to mix up all your ingredients and then find out that packet of yeast or the yeast that you purchased was bad. Baking bread can be quite challenging. One of the secrets to being successful is making sure that you measure your flour accurately. And I always recommend people invest in a good food scale. A cup of flour equals 120 grams. So here we have it. I scoop my flour into the cup using a dry measuring cup. I have 120 grams and I need 3 cups of these. Make sure to sift or strain the flour. It's important to do that. Makes the bread a little bit fluffy and lighter versus heavy. Add in half a teaspoon of salt. You don't need too much sugar in French baguette. I used a tablespoon of honey to test the yeast. And here is the other tablespoon. Setting this at a low speed to begin. I decided to increase the quantity of flour, which happens sometimes. Once you measure everything, the recipe might say 3 cups of flour or 4 cups of flour, but as you're mixing it, you can tell by the consistency of the dough. If it's too soft, you can add gradually add more flour to it. So I ended up with 5.5 cups of flour. Okay, so when the dough pulls away from the mixing bowl and it's no longer, extremely sticky, you don't need to add any more flour. You're going to definitely get a little bit of stickiness, which is okay. Now that the dough is formed, I'm going to rub a little bit of oil inside the mixing bowl to prevent it from sticking. The dough's doubled in size. I'm gonna make 4 loaves out of this. I am cutting them into halves. The surface is clean and I sprinkled a little bit of flour. Now this is where it gets interesting. I am going to flatten it. And roll it. All right, so just making a little bit of usually for bread, the initial dough has to double in size Then you cut them into the shapes that you want. Once you do that, you cover it up and let it rise for an additional 30 minutes. However, with French baguette, we want the bread to be as skinny as possible. So once I am done shaping it, I have the oven on 350 degrees. Once it's ready, preheating at 350 degrees. Once it's ready, I am going to bake. All right, here we have it. I know bread shaping is not my strong suit, but these don't look too bad, do they? Okay, I am ready to, the oven is ready. It's preheated to 350 degrees. As I stated, I want them as skinny and thin as possible. So I'm gonna put this in the oven. But to obtain the crunchiness of the French baguette, I'm going to throw a couple of ice cubes to the bottom of my oven. Yes, a couple of ice cubes. That is going to help steam up the, the oven and help the bread develop that crunchiness. This is Marion's version of French baguette. Let's see how crunchy we got it. See? Yes, it is perfect. This is perfect.